I never thought I'd end up back in my hometown, especially not after 10 years away. But life has a funny way of screwing with your plans. A job layoff, a breakup, and a string of bad luck had me packing up my apartment in the city and dragging my ass back to the place I swore I'd never return to. I told myself it was just temporary. A couple months tops. Crash at my mom's place, regroup, figure out what's next. But deep down, I think I knew this place still had unfinished business for me. That became pretty clear on my second night back. I was at the grocery store, walking down the beer aisle, trying to decide if I hated myself enough to drink another 6-pack of light beer when I heard a voice behind me. Low, familiar, and way deeper than I remembered. "Didn't expect to see you back here." I turned and nearly dropped the 6-pack. It was Eli. Last time I saw him, he was just a teenager, awkward, lanky, all limbs and braces. My best friend Ryan's kid brother. Back then, he used to follow us around like a puppy, always wanting to hang out, always trying to prove he was cool enough to chill with the older guys. Now he was taller than me, broader. His jaw was sharp, his voice had dropped an octave, and his brown eyes looked at me like they knew something they shouldn't. "Eli?" I asked, even though I knew damn well it was him. He smirked. "That's me. Thought you vanished for good." I kinda did. I set the beer down. "Just back for a little while." He gave a slow nod, eyes scanning me like he was putting together a puzzle. "Well, welcome back." I wanted to say more, ask him about Ryan, about life, about what he'd been up to. But there was something in his stare that made my brain short-circuit. It wasn't just friendly recognition. There was something else, something sharp, curious, unsettling. He stepped closer. Not enough to be obvious, but enough that I noticed. He smelled like cologne and summer air. "You coming to Ryan's barbecue next weekend?" he asked. I hadn't even known there was one. I wasn't invited. Eli's smile was all teeth. "Guess that means I get to be the one to invite you. You should come." I nodded, suddenly too aware of how close he was. "Yeah, sure, I'll think about it." "Don't think too long," he said, grabbing a case of craft beer. I'd hate to miss the chance to catch up properly. And with that, he walked off, leaving me standing there like an idiot with warm beer and a racing heart. What the hell just happened? Eli was supposed to be my best friend's little brother, but there was nothing little about the way he looked at me. The whole week leading up to Ryan's barbecue, I kept telling myself I wasn't going to go. I had every excuse lined up. Too busy, too tired, too broke. I hadn't seen most of the people from back home in years and didn't feel like explaining what I'd been up to, or why I was suddenly back living in my childhood bedroom at 32. But Saturday rolled around, and there I was, standing outside Ryan's house with a 6-pack in hand and a knot in my stomach. Ryan opened the door with the same crooked grin I remembered from college. He looked older, maybe a little more tired, but still very much Ryan. "Holy shit, look who finally crawled back," he laughed, pulling me into a quick hug. "Get in here, man." Inside, the place smelled like grilled meat and sunscreen. Laughter spilled in from the backyard. Music was playing low from some Bluetooth speaker, and through the sliding doors I could see a crowd of familiar faces. And then I saw him. Eli. He was by the grill, flipping burgers, wearing a tank top that did zero favors in hiding how much he'd filled out. He caught my eye almost immediately and nodded, the kind of nod that felt like more than just hello, like he'd been waiting for me. Ryan handed me a beer, but I barely noticed. My eyes kept drifting toward the backyard. "He grew up, huh?" Ryan said beside me, following my gaze. I turned sharply. "What?" "Eli," he smirked. "Dude's a beast now. Gets hit on by half the gym and doesn't even notice." I laughed, maybe a little too fast. "Yeah, well, kid used to follow us around like a shadow." Ryan shook his head. "Still does that sometimes." "He doesn't say it, but I think he looked up to you back in the day." The conversation drifted, and eventually we headed outside. People were already a few beers in, lounging in lawn chairs, tossing a football around, shooting the shit like no time had passed. Eli caught me hovering near the cooler and walked over, holding a plate in one hand. Wasn't sure you'd show. Yeah, well, I shrugged. Didn't want to be rude. He stepped a little closer, lowering his voice. You look good. I blinked. Thanks? There was that look again. Bold, direct, like he was reading a script no one else could see. You ever wonder what would have happened if you didn't leave? He asked, casually sipping from a can. I stared at him. What do you mean? He leaned in, just slightly. I mean, maybe you would have seen me grow up. That line. It hit me in a way I wasn't prepared for. I laughed, mostly to shake off the tension curling in my stomach. Pretty sure you were still watching cartoons when I left. Eli smiled. Not for as long as you think. We were interrupted by someone calling him over to help with drinks, and just like that, he was gone again. But something had changed. That night, long after the barbecue wound down and I was back in my car, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The look in his eyes. The weight behind his words. This wasn't just nostalgia. He remembered me. And now I was starting to remember him too. Only differently. After the barbecue, I told myself it was just a weird moment. One of those awkward conversations that happens when someone's had a couple beers and nostalgia's running high. But I couldn't shake it. Not the way Eli had looked at me. Not the way he'd said I looked good. And definitely not that line. Maybe he would have seen me grow up. Like he wanted me to understand something he wasn't saying out loud. I kept telling myself to forget about it. I even avoided going to the gym because I knew Eli worked out there. But then Thursday night, I got a text from an unknown number. Hey. It's Eli. Got your number from Ryan. You doing anything tomorrow night? I stared at the screen for a solid minute. Not really. Why? Come by my place. Chill, hang, nothing crazy. Got a new PS5 game I want to try. Could use a second player? I should have said no, but I didn't. Friday night, I drove over. His apartment was on the top floor of a duplex just outside town. Way nicer than I expected. He opened the door in joggers and a black tee, barefoot, hair still wet from a shower. His place smelled like laundry, and whatever cologne he wore that lingered in a way you didn't notice until you were already thinking about it too much. Glad you came, he said, stepping aside. The game was some co-op zombie shooter. I barely remembered how to play anything, but Eli didn't seem to care. He kept laughing every time I messed up, leaning into me on the couch like we'd done this 100 times before. And it was easy. Easier than I expected. We talked shit, drank a couple of beers, made fun of the characters on screen. Somewhere between level 3 and 4, I noticed our legs were touching. Not accidentally, not once, just touching. Like it was natural. At one point, I leaned forward to grab my drink, and he didn't move away. His thigh pressed right into mine. Neither of us said anything. Eventually, we gave up on the game and just let the menu screen loop quietly behind us. The room had that late-night stillness, where even small sounds felt louder. You ever think about how weird it is? Eli asked suddenly, his voice low. What is? He glanced at me, his expression unreadable, that we can know someone for years and not really know them at all. I turned to look at him. You mean you and me? He didn't answer right away, just held my gaze. Then he said, I used to wait for you to come over when I was a kid. Every time Ryan said you were stopping by, I'd get excited. And I hated it, because I knew I wasn't supposed to. Something in my chest tightened. I used to think it was just a phase, he went on, that I'd grow out of it. But I didn't. I just got better at hiding it. I swallowed hard. Eli, I'm not a kid anymore, he said quietly. You don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know. The silence that followed was thick, uncomfortable, and somehow charged with everything I hadn't let myself think about. And then he did something that knocked the air right out of my lungs. He reached over, slow and deliberate, and placed his hand on mine. Not forceful, not hesitant, just there, present, solid, like he'd waited a long time to do it. And I didn't pull away, I didn't move, I didn't even breathe. I just sat there, his hand on mine, heart rattling inside my chest like it was trying to break out. Eli didn't say anything. He just looked at me, calm, patient, like he wasn't afraid of whatever came next. And that scared the hell out of me. Because I was. I'd spent most of my adult life pretending I had things figured out, acting like the past was behind me, like nothing I left in this town could touch me anymore. But in one night, this kid, no, not a kid, not anymore, this man was cracking something open inside me I didn't know I'd locked up. "I don't know what to say," I finally whispered. "You don't have to say anything," Eli replied, thumb brushing gently over my knuckles. That small motion, so simple, so tender, undid me more than any grand gesture ever could. I looked down at our hands. My palm was sweating. I felt completely exposed, like he was seeing a version of me I didn't even know existed until that moment. "I don't want to mess this up," I said, voice rough. "Whatever this is." "You're not messing anything up," he said. "I wouldn't have asked you here if I didn't want this." He leaned back a little, giving me space without letting go. It was weirdly grounding. "This isn't some crush," he continued. "I know what I want. And I've wanted you for a long time." That word again. Wanted. My mind went back to all those afternoons years ago. Him tagging along when Ryan and I played video games, or when we biked around town. I'd never thought much of it. Never considered what it might have meant to him. And now, here he was, laying it all out with a calmness I didn't know how to handle. "I used to think about this," he said quietly. "About sitting next to you. About you looking at me like you are right now." I didn't even realize I was looking at him differently until he said it. There was no denying it now. He'd grown into someone magnetic, someone who made me want to stop running from everything I'd been avoiding, including myself. But that didn't make it simple. "You know I'm older, right?" I said, finally managing a half laugh. "Like, a solid decade." "Yeah, I know," Eli said, eyes steady. "And I don't care." "You should." "Why?" I didn't have a good answer. Just fear. He leaned in slightly. "Tell me to stop, and I will." He was so close I could feel his breath, warm and steady. But I didn't say a word. Instead, I looked at his lips. And then, I kissed him. It wasn't fireworks. It wasn't explosive. It was slow, uncertain, like we were both testing something fragile. His hand slid up my arm, anchoring me, and mine moved to his neck, fingers brushing the edge of his jaw. And the second our mouths really found a rhythm, something deep in me finally stopped resisting. He wasn't just Ryan's little brother anymore. He was Eli. And I couldn't pretend I didn't want him to. That kiss should have been the end of it. A moment we chalked up to nostalgia, or confusion, or too many beers and not enough sleep. But it wasn't. It didn't feel like a mistake. It felt inevitable. We pulled apart slowly, both of us breathing harder than the kiss warranted. His hand stayed on my arm, thumb tracing lazy circles, like he was afraid to let the moment slip away. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded, though it took a second for my voice to catch up. "Yeah. I just didn't expect this." He gave a soft smile, eyes still locked on mine. "I've been hoping for this." I exhaled, leaning back against the couch. My heart was racing, but there was something calm about his presence, like he wasn't here to rush me, only to be there if I was ready. We sat in silence for a few minutes, the kind of silence that doesn't feel awkward, just heavy with everything unspoken. And then Eli stood up and offered me his hand. "Come here." I hesitated. This was the line. Crossing it meant nothing would ever be the same. Not with him, not with Ryan, not with how I viewed my entire past. But I took his hand anyway. He led me to his room. Not fast, not like it was some impulsive grab. Just steady, confident. The door clicked shut behind us, and suddenly I was hyper-aware of every breath, every heartbeat, every inch of space between us that was quickly vanishing. He stepped closer, not saying a word. His hands came to the hem of my shirt, pausing for a beat. I nodded. The fabric lifted over my head and dropped to the floor. Then his shirt followed. Seeing him up close like that, how solid he'd become, how calm he was in his own skin, it made me feel both vulnerable and weirdly safe. He kissed me again, deeper this time, and I matched him without thinking. His touch was warm and firm, fingers brushing down my sides like he was learning me piece by piece. There was nothing rushed about it, no pressure, just this slow, careful urgency like he'd waited long enough and wasn't gonna fumble it now. We stumbled to the bed, all tension and breath and quiet need. He kissed down my neck, my chest, his hands mapping every new place like they'd always been meant to. I didn't expect it to feel this grounding. I'd had hookups before, flings, even a couple relationships that got too serious too fast. But this was different. It felt like someone finally seeing the part of me I never knew needed to be seen. When we were done, if you could even call it that, we just lay there, our bodies tangled under the sheets, the air still warm with everything we hadn't said yet. He turned his head toward me. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said, voice soft. "Better than okay." A slow grin spread across his face. "Good, because I'm not gonna pretend I want this to be a one-time thing." I looked over at him. "Yeah?" "Yeah," he said, like it wasn't even a question. And for the first time since I'd come back to this town, I didn't feel like I was running from something. I felt like maybe I'd come back to the exact place I was supposed to be. I woke up the next morning with sunlight filtering through the curtains and Eli's arm draped across my chest. For a second, I let myself just exist in the moment. His skin warm against mine, his slow, even breathing at the back of my neck. It felt too good to be real. Too simple, too right. And then my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I reached for it, trying not to wake him. It was a text from Ryan. "Yo, you free for lunch today? Got something I want to run by you." Just reading it sent a jolt through my spine. Eli stirred beside me. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I said quickly, locking the screen. "Just Ryan." He yawned and pressed a lazy kiss to my shoulder. "You gonna tell him?" I hesitated. "I don't know." He propped himself up on one elbow, looking at me seriously. "I'm not asking for a public announcement. But we can't sneak around forever." "I get that," I said, voice low. "I do. But he's your brother. My best friend. If he finds out the wrong way," Eli nodded, lying back down. "I know, but I'm not ashamed of this. Of us." The word us lingered in the air like a challenge I wasn't quite ready to answer. I got up, got dressed, and kissed him on the way out. He gave me this look, soft, sure, trusting, that made me feel 10 times worse about the anxiety building in my gut. I met Ryan at our old hangout spot, a greasy diner on the edge of town, the kind of place with cracked booths and syrup-stained menus, where nothing ever changed. He was already there, drinking coffee and tearing into a breakfast sandwich. "Look at you, back in the land of the living," he teased as I slid into the booth. "Trying," I muttered. He raised an eyebrow. "You look different." "Different how?" He squinted at me. "I don't know, just not so dead inside, I guess." I laughed. Too loud, too defensive. We talked about nothing for a while. His job, old friends, sports. I kept waiting for him to bring up Eli, to say he knew something, saw something, but he never did. Until, suddenly, he leaned in and said, "You remember that girl Eli dated for a while? The one from the gym?" I blinked. Vaguely? "He broke it off last year," Ryan said, shaking his head. "Said it wasn't working. But he never really explained why. Honestly, I think he's just not into girls. I mean, I don't care, it's his life. But he never said anything, and I always wondered if he was worried what I'd think." I swallowed hard, unsure of where this was going. "He ever talked to you about that?" Ryan asked. I shook my head. "No, not directly." Ryan nodded slowly. "If he ever does, just tell him I don't care. Like, I've got his back, no matter what. Always have." I stared at my plate, stomach doing flips. "Yeah," I said. "I'll tell him." The rest of the lunch passed in a blur. Later, when I got back to Eli's place, I told him everything. What Ryan said, what he didn't say, and how much it messed with my head. He listened without interrupting. Then he said, "So maybe it wouldn't be the end of the world if we told him." I sat down on his bed, elbows on my knees. "I'm just scared, man." Eli sat beside me. So am I. But I don't want to keep being your secret. I don't want that either. He looked at me, serious and calm. Then let's do this right, one step at a time. And in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't just some summer hookup. It wasn't just about lust or timing or nostalgia. This was real. And maybe it was messy and complicated and a little scary, but it was worth figuring out. We didn't tell Ryan right away. Instead, we started doing this thing where we spent whole evenings at Eli's apartment, ordering takeout, watching trash TV, playing games neither of us really paid attention to. And at night, after the world had gone quiet, we'd lie tangled together, not saying much, just breathing, just being. There was no label for whatever this was between us, but it didn't feel casual anymore, not even close. It felt like something I could fall into, something I already was falling into. A couple weeks passed before Eli finally said, "I think it's time." I knew exactly what he meant. So we invited Ryan over. We didn't do anything dramatic. No hand-holding, no big speech. We just sat him down in Eli's living room and told him the truth. That we were seeing each other, that it wasn't a one-time thing, that we didn't plan it, but it happened, and we were happy. At first, Ryan didn't say anything. He just stared at us like he was trying to run the numbers in his head, trying to figure out how long this had been going on. And then he leaned back on the couch, ran a hand through his hair, and let out a long sigh. "Well," he said, "that explains why you've been blowing off my texts." I tensed. "Ryan." He held up a hand. "Relax. I'm not pissed. I just wish you told me sooner." I blinked. "Wait, you're okay with this?" He looked at Eli, then at me. "You're both adults. And you're my brother. And you're my best friend. If you make each other happy, I don't care how weird it is." Eli laughed. "It's kind of weird," Ryan shrugged. "So what? I've seen weirder. Just don't break each other's hearts, all right?" Something about the way he said it hit me hard. Because for the first time, I realized that this wasn't just some surreal private thing we were trying to keep afloat. It was real, out in the open. And that made it scarier, but also lighter. The next few weeks felt different. Eli and I stopped tiptoeing. He started coming over to my mom's house like it was no big deal. I met a couple of his friends. We went to the lake one weekend and just laid on a blanket in the sun, not caring who saw us or what they thought. And I found myself smiling more, laughing more, sleeping better. One night, we were lying on his bed, the window open, crickets humming outside. Eli turned to me and said, "I used to think I was imagining it, that I made it all up in my head, those feelings I had for you. I rolled onto my side. You didn't imagine it." "I know that now," he said, "but it still feels crazy sometimes." I nodded. "Yeah, crazy but kind of perfect too." He smiled. "You think so?" "I do." And I meant it. Because love doesn't always show up the way you expect. Sometimes it waits. It lingers in the background until the timing is finally, improbably, right. And when it does, you don't question it, you hold on. It's strange how some of the biggest shifts in your life happen quietly, not with grand declarations or fireworks, but in the stillness of an ordinary moment. Two people sitting on a porch, the smell of charcoal in the air, laughter echoing faintly from the backyard. That's where I found myself a few months later. Same house, same backyard. Ryan's grill was fired up, people were drinking cheap beer and tossing a football across the lawn. But this time, Eli wasn't across the yard. He was next to me, sitting on the porch steps. Our legs pressed together like that had always been normal. And no one blinked. No weird looks, no whispers, just us. I watched the sun dip behind the trees, shadows stretching long across the grass. The kind of golden hour that makes everything feel softer, like time's giving you a moment to breathe. You ever think about how none of this was supposed to happen? I asked, keeping my eyes on the fading sky. Eli glanced over, his profile glowing in the last bit of sunlight. "Yeah, All the time. I smiled, shook my head a little. I came back here thinking I was just cleaning up the mess, finding a soft place to land until I could run again. And now? He asked. I looked at him, really looked, at the quiet confidence he carried now, at the way he still searched my face when I spoke, like every word meant something, at how natural it had become to reach for him, to lean in, to belong to something again. Now I think maybe I was meant to come back. He didn't say anything for a second. Then he reached for my hand, right there in the open. Fingers laced into mine like it was the most normal thing in the world. And it was. That's when I realized what I'd been afraid to name for weeks. Maybe longer. This wasn't just about chemistry, or nostalgia, or two people finding comfort in something familiar. It wasn't a phase. It wasn't a fling. And it sure as hell wasn't temporary. This was real. The kind of real that doesn't knock the wind out of you. It anchors you, reminds you that it's okay to stop running, that you don't always need to start over somewhere new. Sometimes, what you're looking for is waiting for you right where you left it. Sometimes, it's not about rewriting the past, it's about finally seeing it clearly and choosing something better. Eli turned to me, voice low. "I'm glad you stayed." I nodded, my grip on his hand tightening. "Me too."